7:48 is the time now. So somewhere to grab a breath of fresh air or maybe tire out the kids. We've all found good reasons to take a trip to our local park. That could soon become a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, cuts to council budgets and pressures to find land for housing mean parks are facing a period of decline. That's according to a group of MPs who say there needs to be a fundamental change to the way that they're managed. Breakfast John Maguire reports.
What have parks ever done for us?
We've taken up tennis. Well, not very good.
We're not Wimbledon standard.
It's got all the facilities for the kids.
It feels almost wild, even though you're in the centre of London.
This is very, very close to my house, so we don't have very far to walk with the children.
It's a perfect place to walk the dog. It's quite big, and there's a cafe over there.
They may be loved, but the crucial question surrounds their value and, of course, their cost. So for the past 6 months, a committee of MPs has been asking that question and listening to the answers. It found that with council budgets so tight, many local parks are at a tipping point. What of their viability? What of their future? How can they be saved?
Instead of kind of regarding parks as a kind of only a sort of leisure and recreation area of service, we should be thinking about parks as big contributors to public health and to environmental policy and to community cohesion, and maybe they can be reprioritised. But there is fundamentally a problem about the level of cuts that local authorities have been experiencing.
And we started doing some work and eventually created a 10-acre nature reserve where they've planted 60,000 trees to encourage flora and fauna.
The innovation started here on the edge of the Pennines in Oldham more than 30 years ago.
It's really vital for the community that they've got this sort of open space that's looked after, that's maintained, but it's for their benefit.
As well as the nature reserve, there's a community garden and a football pitch. It's the result of partnerships between the council, the charity Groundwork and local volunteers. A model example of how public green spaces can determine their own future.
It was a redundant piece of land, fly tipping, things like that. From that we were able to create this community garden and help out with adding some elements to the sports pitch, and really it helped the group service the community a lot more, and more people could get involved with that. Long term it is a cost saving to the council, but you know the councils have to be responsible about what they're doing.
The MPs are calling on the government and local authorities to ensure they have strategic plans in place for these emeralds, these green jewels in the crown. They believe parks must remain publicly owned, open to all and free of charge. From flood management to healthy living to biodiversity of wildlife, our parks and green spaces can be the lungs and the heart of our increasingly urbanised lives. John Maguire, BBC News, Oldham.
Well, watching that with us here, Helen Griffiths, who's Chief Executive of Fields in Trust. That's a charity that works to safeguard recreational spaces. And MARINA, TEAT, who's from Mirfield Road Residents Group. Very good morning to you both.
Good morning.
People really care about their open spaces, don't they? And I want to ask you, MARINA, first of all, about your group that you set up. Because you're in a place where there wasn't much outdoor space. And I think, as you explain it to us, maybe we can see the before and after shots that will really illustrate it. Tell us what you had, what you turned it into. This is the before shot.
Well, this is the before shot. This was actually what it was. It was a disused landlocked garage site, council garage site.
And there are houses around.
Yeah, the houses back all round it. A few houses back onto it, and they've got gates out onto the site now. Residents just got together and thought there's got to be something we can actually do with this, because it was just being used for fly tipping, and kids were congregating on there. And we came up with some ideas, went to local housing, started raising some funding and put things in place. Now it's a well-used site for all ages. We've got a new group coming on this year from Tiddlywinks Nursery, from 3-year-olds up to 80-year-olds.
And you've got vegetable plots as well?
Yeah, but we do vegetables, with fruit trees, we do flowers, there's seating areas, there's a barbecue on site if anybody wants to use it. It's just a well-used site.
God, it's really transformed.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have taken a lot of dedication from you all. And
we're all very passionate about what we've achieved, and we're very proud of what we've achieved over the last few years. We have all sorts of groups, school groups that have actually come on site, done things. Now they've gone off and done things on their own sites in the schools. Cubs, Scouts, everybody uses it in the local area.
Well, it's interesting, Helen, everyone's seeing that. Everyone's just going, that is extraordinary transformation that's occurred. But the bad part of this story is that reading through some of the figures, and you're across this, that some parks management funds are being cut by up to 97%.
Absolutely. I think the story that Marina's just told about the fantastic transformation of a site and the way that that plays into the community, it's one of the most universal public services to have access to green space from cradle to grave. And they support us so well across so many different functions. But unfortunately, local authorities are suffering a terribly challenging time in being able to continue to maintain those spaces because of the level of cuts that they've experienced over the past few years, and unfortunately the cuts that are projected to continue. So the report out from the CLG inquiry says that parks are at a tipping point, and they really are.
Is there anything that can be done, though, that doesn't involve money? Because clearly Marina's highlighted there brilliant community projects. So is other ways communities can help?
Absolutely. I think there are a range of solutions, and the recommendations from the report are really welcomed, I think. There's a real sense that we are starting to understand the value of our parks, and that the value of our parks and how we consider it should go beyond the cost of cutting the grass. We should be considering the impacts they have on all of the different health and social agendas that they can help us to achieve in tackling obesity, tackling antisocial behaviour. I think there is a lot of work for us to do to revalue and protect those spaces, which is the work that my organisation Fields in Trust has done for a long time, to safeguard for future generations access to green spaces, because once they've been developed, of course, they're never coming back into recreational use, and that's a big concern. But in terms of funding, then I do think, and as the report recommends, we are going to need to see innovative solutions which will involve community groups like Marina's getting involved and taking some sort of ownership over the site to help with contributing to the ongoing maintenance of it.
People watching, Marina, having seen what you've done, that land was council owned.
Yeah.
And so when you first put forward the ideas, there's a group of us, did they put money forward? And who came up with the cash? Because at some point you need money to do that.
A couple of us decided that we'd approach all the residents first to make sure they were OK with the idea. Then we went to our local housing office, who in turn put £15,000 towards it. Private sector housing came on board then and put 35,000 into it, and I applied for lottery funding and got 49,999. You've just got to get...
It's got to
be, yeah. And then after the site was being built, we approached the local school because we knew the school children were going to come on site, and they funded us for the big polytunnel that we now have.
It's obvious from what you're saying how it's really helped the children in the area. What about, because we heard Helen talking there about it can help with lots of other areas of your life, people with obesity and things like that. Have you seen it's made a difference then in the community to help people out?
I've found that it's brought part of the community spirit back that was lacking in the area. You find more of the elderly will come out. They might not do anything, they'll just sit on the benches, they'll chat, say hello and go. But 5 minutes of that being out in the fresh air rather than looking at four walls has changed things.
And there might be people watching this, Helen, who, I mean, that was a, I mean, we're seeing those pictures now, it was a complete transformation from what was a derelict area. If your local park is just a bit rubbish, and, that's a lot of people saying, oh, it's looking a bit run down, it's not, if people go to their local authority and they're saying, we haven't got any money, what happens next? How do you push that through?
I think it's a really difficult challenge, and I think one of our concerns around having those parks in a state of decline and demise, as we are identifying and as it's coming forward, is it threatens their future so much more. If a space isn't being well used by the community, then the likelihood of it being redeveloped for other purposes, because it's not a well-used green space, obviously becomes much more likely. And so I think finding ways for us to collectively address the issue, and I think that's really the approach that we need to take, because parks do play such a role across all of those different areas. We need to not be looking solely at the parks maintenance budget when we think about how parks are funded and how they contribute.
You will both enjoy the pictures we're going to show now. We've been asking for people to send in their park pictures. So let's have a look at some of the ones that have been sent in this morning.
Yeah, these are some of them that caught our eye. This beautiful sunrise over Rother Valley Country Park in Rotherham was snapped by Vince.
This one here, Django, the Springer Spaniel, doing what he does best. This is Wanstead Flats, Parklands in Forest Gate, London. It's funny that sometimes the parks in in big cities can be some of the best maintained in some circumstances, can't they?
Absolutely. I mean, 61% of park users are in urban areas, and over half the population use parks on a very regular basis.
I think we had another one here. It's from Rita. This is Woodford Park in Berkshire. It's the same picture again, isn't it? Have we got the one from Rita? There we go. This is Woodley Park in Berkshire. Really proud of the park, used for all sorts, from sports. That's the other thing, isn't it? It's not just, you know, sitting around looking at enjoying the sea. It's used for practical purposes like sport as well.
Yeah, and let's have a look at this misty morning pictured here in Preston's Evenham Park, where Ben is heading this morning for his 99th park run, not long until he gets his T-shirt for the 100th park run, because that makes a big difference as well, doesn't it? The events like park run happening all across the country too.
Absolutely.
Love to see you both here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's brilliant that. We want to come for a visit now. Looks great.
Welcome anytime.
Thank you very much, Marina. Thanks, Helen. It's just coming up to 9 o'clock. Coming up in the next half hour, we'll be taking a look at what's in this morning's papers.